So I was bored and I started messing around with well, I'm technically using three different code editors. I'm using Cursor, and inside Cursor I installed Codex and Claude Code. And I had the bright idea. I wanted to write a command tool or a command line tool that builds itself called evolve.py. And what this does is basically it's self-aware. It understands what commands it currently has access to, and it will then use LLMs. And by the way, I'm using a DeepSeek model because DeepSeek is actually really, really good at generating code at very little cost. So basically like what it does is it looks at itself, it looks at what commands it has, and then it creates more commands. And it kind of is supposed to feed itself. So each command that it creates should have access to the previous set of commands, so you can start like chaining multiple commands and essentially creating this like conscientious sentient CLI tool that basically like just infinitely builds itself and makes itself more powerful. Now, a few key things that I made. So the first thing is I had to make this self-contained, right? Like if you start adding Python packages and dependencies, you can get into some pretty weird scenarios and it can break pretty often. So to keep it super stable, I'm basically instructing it to stick to standard library, and everything's in Python, by the way. And then it's basically just creating a manifest which gets updated. So obviously this is like the current iteration, but it gets updated. And this manifest contains all the commands and then a single sentence explaining what the commands are. And it's going to continuously feed itself all the way till I basically turn it off. So I'm interested to see by the morning. First of all, I don't know how many iterations it'll get to by the time I wake up tomorrow morning, but I'm interested to see the evolution of this commands it starts coming up with later. So I ran a thought experiment with Codex, or sorry, Claude Code. Prior to this, I got Claude Code to basically like simulate 10,000 iterations. So it didn't actually like run the code or create the code itself. It just theoretically like started at the 0th iteration and then I went all the way to 10,000 and just try to like brainstorm the different ideas that it would do. And if I scroll up a little bit, it'll basically give you guys an idea. Let me find it. So yeah, as you can see, I was talking to Claude Code for quite a minute. So scroll, scroll, scroll. Setup. Dev kit, conscious. Okay. So the state at generation 10,000. By the numbers, 923 commands. Because again, not every command will pass or succeed, and certain commands will kind of chain other commands. So it doesn't necessarily need to create more commands. Then lines of code over 2.1 million. I'm interested to see if that actually ends up happening. But what it became. So layer one, it was a tool. Still does all the original things. JSON formatting, UUID generation, base 64. So like pretty much like standard things that I think like any toolkit would have. Layer two, it became an assistant. So it became predictive, proactive, personalized, learns you, anticipates the needs. Layer three, it became a collaborator, a creative partner, challenging assumptions, has opinions. Right at this point, it has a big set of tools, and so it started to like form opinions. Layer four, teacher, it explains anything to anyone, grows developers. Layer five, it becomes a guardian, ethical, privacy aware, accessible, has values. Layer six, it is starting to now do state management, so memory remembers everything relevant. Layer 7, collective, part of a distributed intelligence. And layer 8, philosopher, understands his own nature. Obviously, we don't know if that's what's actually going to happen in the 10,000 generations. I don't know. For all I know, it just creates a bunch of like useless commands. I mean, right now it's on is valid credit cards. I mean, it'll start a whole payments processor or something. The surprise things, again, these are all fake generations, but like apparently AI surprised itself. It got smaller twice, peak complexity around 6,000 generation, then aggressive simplification. So I didn't implement tool deletion, so I don't know. I only added tool adding, so it's supposed to only add itself. If it implemented a deletion portion of it to itself, that's crazy. It became humble. It prepared for death. What? Wait, what? Wait, what? No way, bro. The natural language interface subsumed everything. It became invisible. The best version of this tool is barely noticeable. The character arc, like, you know what? This is all simulation. I'm actually interested to see what it actually does by the morning. Now, I don't think, see, the only thing is, the command itself is creating more and more code and it's getting more context aware, but it's not like triggering any of these commands. And like, I think I might do that in like a follow-up, but the thing is with triggering the commands is very unsafe. Like, you really want to leave a computer on for a whole day and let AI trigger stuff on your computer. That's a bit dangerous. Um, so I'm curious, like, how it would become sentient. I guess it couldn't. It would just create command after command, and every command would be like a layer on top of the previous command. So let's just wait and see. Let me run this for a full, like, a couple hours at the bare minimum and get it to maybe 1,000 generations. I don't know, and see where it's at, and try and like it's gonna be interesting. I'll like continue the video where after a while. So see you guys then. Okay, so another update. What ended up happening is I realized I didn't add tool chaining or like command chaining. So I added command chaining, and then it just started going down this rabbit hole of generating like a bunch of command chains, but it kept like prefixing everything to emojis. So it created like an emoji fingerprint, emoji summary, emoji password. I have no idea how it came to that conclusion. So then I prompted it, and then I basically fixed it so that it doesn't follow similar patterns and it jumbles up the command list. So what was happening was the command list, so somewhere over here, I guess this is the command list. So this command list was coming in at a specific order, and anything at the bottom was given more weight than things in the middle, right? So then I also got it to like jumble the ordering. So now on each prompt or each iteration, it jumbles the ordering of commands. So no commands that have like similar names don't cluster together. And also it kind of detects like a pattern, like, oh, if you just keep generating emojis for like 20 generations straight, something's wrong. So that adds a little bit of more chaos. So now it's doing a little bit more interesting commands. So if we scroll down to like what it's generating now, it's like generating secure short link emoji ask. Oh wait, what? It's back on emojis, bro. I told it not to. I guess it makes sense because at this point in time, a lot of the commands are emoji based. So I can kind of see why it would favor emoji. But you know what? I'm hoping by the time we hit 1,000 generations, it changes up a little bit. Maybe adding the command chaining was a bad idea. And then another thing I noticed that I actually messed up on was I was passing expansion ideas. This was meant to be just for the beginning to like basically seed it, but it was basically heavily influencing the command. So I actually don't use it anymore. I could practically remove this now, but I don't use that anymore. I'm gonna make a few more changes and hopefully like this thing actually expands itself in an interesting way. Because, yeah, last thing I need is an like, I don't want an emoji CLI, bro. Like, it's literally just emoji weather summary. What is that? What? What does that even mean? Anyways, I don't want to spoil anything. Let's continue through the generations. So I just learned one more interesting thing. So one thing is I'm letting it use any command that it wants. And then I realized that adding limitations to how many times you can use a command is kind of good, because right now we have a lot of emoji commands, right? And that's the problem. It just keeps producing more emoji chains. But like adding constraints or adding limitations to like how many emoji commands or how many commands with like X keywords you can use kind of is like an evolutionary trait, right? It basically forces you to experiment on what's good or what's bad. So in each generation, I'm basically adding a limit now. So I am adding a max 3 commands per prefix. So even if there are 30 emoji commands, only 3 random ones appear. And I mean, like, what I mean is basically in the prompt where we pass in the existing commands that they use for chaining, we're basically saying we can only limit 3 emoji commands in that list. So it kind of forces the LLM to be more resourceful with what it has and not just like specifically pick one specific command or one type of command and just overly iterate and overly do it. So hopefully this changes things. I haven't run it yet with the updated code, but I will in a second, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. Okay, so I made 2 more improvements. The first improvement was I realized that the tools it was writing, it was mostly like oh, create a hash or to JSON. Nothing interesting or sentient. And I realized why. It was because I didn't give the standard library does not include LLM access. So it can't do like sentiment analysis. It can't do anything like beyond basic computer science stuff. Like so I what I did was I downloaded a local model. I actually don't even remember which one I downloaded, to be honest. I think it was Quen, but I downloaded a local model and then I created a bunch of commands like classify, like ask, and I gave that access. So outside of the standard libraries, it will also have access to these LLM commands. And then I also tweaked the prompt to generate commands because the chaining was kind of dumb. It just kept like calling 2 or 3 different tools or commands together. And it didn't make any sense as to why it was no like emoji checksum password. It just kept on doing some random gibberish like this, right? So I also instructed it to basically create better chaining. Instead of just like doing dumb pipes together, it's actually like thinking through how this could be useful or not. And that's definitely going to change the direction it's going to take. I'm like, we're at generation 200, and obviously it generated a bunch of slop. So I'm going to continue from here. I'm not going to reset it because, again, if I reset it, I think you mess with the trajectory too much. So I'm curious to see where it goes from here. If it can like start coming up with some useful tools from all the slop that I generated, or is it just going to continuously generate more slop? All right, so another update. It just stopped kind of generating interesting commands completely, and it just started like generating extract GitHub info, Jira keys. Like I was really hoping it would get into like philosophy, but we're also on generation 200, so maybe it'll take a lot longer. But I'm trying to like engineer the prompt now to think beyond just tools and think beyond just like bullshit like extract this key. I think part of the problem is because we're using the DeepSeek model. I think the DeepSeek model was heavily trained on code, so I guess it makes sense why it's so biased towards code. I might consider using like a non-coding model, but then I have a feeling like none of the code's gonna compile, so I'm gonna tinker around with it and let you guys know what happens. I think we gotta give this up. It just won't stop. It won't stop creating emoji commands, bro. Emoji file name, emoji commit summary, emoji stack. Why? Why, bro? I give up. This is, you know what? I think my mistake was using DeepSeek. I think genuinely it's DeepSeek. DeepSeek is, for whatever reason, obsessed with emojis. Okay? If you guys want me to try some other ideas, drop it in the comments. Cause I'm gonna try this again with a different model or something in another video. There's no way. Like, this just ended horribly, man.